All right, it's 3 minutes after. Let's get started. Really excited that we have a couple of guests here today. We did this paper at the end of last year in December, and we asked 14 different practitioners what their feelings were, their question or their answers to four questions that we posed to them. We created this nice report that is available for everyone that will give you the link. And we've asked four of those people. Um, we've got Will Thomas, Mary D'Angelo, Freddie Murray, and Marcel Lee, who are here. They're going to help us not only give us their opinions, but hopefully represent a little bit of the themes that came out from some of the other people who responded to the question. So happy to have you here. And I'm going to jump right in and we'll get going. We've got a lot here. A couple things housekeeping wise. If you have a question or if you have something that you want to say about this, please don't be shy. Enter a question into the Q&A. We do use the Q&A and not the chat, as you see. So maybe it's a little bit different, but if you get in and ask a question, we'll either answer it in the background in written format if somebody feels like they have a direct question for one of our speakers and they want to answer it there, or if it's a more general question that we think will add to the conversation, we'll break in and ask that. So appreciate that. So let's get going. I do like to do a little housekeeping. If you're not familiar with Feedly, I'll give you a quick overview of what Feedly is and what Feedly does. So Feedly is a threat intelligence product that pulls in thousands of trusted sources. We vet a lot of these sources. We pull in data, millions of records every day from the open source, and we pull them in. We use our AI models to read every one of them. We look for things like TTP IDs, but also descriptions of what that TTP is, vulnerabilities, malware, any of that kind of stuff that is important to threat intelligence. And we pull that in and we put it into our threat graph. And our threat graph is essentially the connections between all of those things and allows us to find some very interesting information, like what techniques is this threat actor using, what malware are they using to exploit what vulnerabilities. All that stuff is available in different ways through the Feedly interface. And so we have what we call intel agents, which collect this data related to your PIRs on a 24/7 basis and let you know what's new, what's changed, and help you keep up with all that. AI feeds allow you to filter down to the things that really are relevant to you, to receive articles about all those relative content. So you can filter down to like the industry you're in, the specific kinds of vulnerabilities that you're concerned about, et cetera. Really get it down to narrow so you're not dealing with all that noise. Ask AI is really everywhere in the product. It allows you to query things like the articles that are in your feeds or a particular vulnerability that might be represented in an insight card, which is a summary of everything we know about that vulnerability, to ask more deeper questions. And you can turn that into reports, or you can launch into the report builder, which is also leverages a lot of AI to help you create these reports, summarize things, etc. Similarly, you can create these automated newsletters, which allow you to send out daily, weekly reports that are tailored to your specific stakeholder. So if you have somebody in the SOC that you're sending reports to, it might be more technical. You want it to be daily. You want it to be very timely. You might want it to have specific information about IOCs or TTPs, that kind of stuff. You create that newsletter that goes out to them at that kind of cadence, but your CISO might have a different cadence where they're getting more business and risk and geopolitical type information. And we also have lots of integration. So if you're like many of our customers, they might just use us as almost threat intelligence middleware that is pulling in all this information, synthesizing it, analyzing it, and then filtering it down to what matters and pulling in all that context into their tip or their SIM or their SOAR. So different ways that we facilitate all that. So if that's at all interesting to you, we encourage you to go out to Feedly, request a demo, start a trial, that kind of thing. But I will pass on from there, and we'll move on to we have four people. I say TI advisors. I said that. It's a typo on my end, but these are all CTI practitioners who um, responded to the survey and have graciously given us their time here today to help us understand what some of these trends and concepts and things that they're talking about in the report are in a little bit more detail, a little bit more color. So I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Freddie. You want to just give us like a quick 30-second background?
Sure. So, of course, my name is Freddy Murray. I'm Norwegian, so that's the reason for this funny accent. Just arrived back to Norway after being a few days in DC and the winter storm. I'm not going to dive into that. So usually I worked in a nonprofit in the finance sector in the Nordics. We service 5 different countries with threat intelligence, and my focus is the strategic level. I also teach intelligence and how to apply it into CTI, and I do a PhD currently on actually how I'm going to research how can we apply intelligence tradecraft into CTI, and how will AI help or not us doing that.
Awesome. Mary, do you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I should say. Nice to meet you. My name is Mary D'Angelo. I'm the solutions lead at Filigran. You'll probably know Filigran as the creator of OpenCTI, the threat intelligence platform, but most of my notable work was when I was researching and analyzing dark web forums. So I spent 2 years kind of scouring dark web and deep web sites, building reports, and making analysis on all of that. And so today, my focus will be what I've been seeing across our customer base in terms of, the various CTI teams, because we work with a full range from banks to nonprofits to retail. And so what I've seen best practices and okay practices and things will be adding a different perspective to the call.
Great. Will, how about you?
Thanks for having me on. I've been recently in the last year or so been working for a company called Team Cymru. Team Cymru is one of the first original CTI companies, has been active for 25 plus years. We specialize in net flow data, and I work as a threat intelligence advisor for our customers. I've been working in CTI about 7 years now. Used to work for a company called Equinix, which I used to work with Marcel at for 3.5 years, leading the threat hunting program there. And then also I used to work at another UK-based CTI vendor doing similar stuff to what Mary was doing, dark web forum, cybercrime profiling for UK banks and police.
Awesome. Marcel?
Hey, everybody. Happy to be here with you today. I am Marcel, obviously, and I am a security researcher by practice. I have my own consulting company, Fractal Security Group, and I'm also a adjunct professor at a university here in Maryland, which is where I'm based. And this is very cold for us, Freddie, I will say. This is not normal weather. Might not be Norway weather, but anyway. And I am also the president of a nonprofit called Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu, which is mostly about women and cyber. So happy to share more information about that with folks if they're interested.
Okay,
Thank you.
awesome. So we do a real quick thing. Everybody come off mute and we do a quick finish the sentence, we call it. So I'll ask a question and then just go around the table, answer one thing. So the one thing I'm looking forward to in the next month is Mary.
One thing, just what the outcome will be of this webinar.
Okay. Will.
I think this month I'm looking forward to planning the rest of the year. Basically, there's a lot of events that we're doing and a lot of partnerships that we're building. And I think the start of the year is always quite fun to help line up what we've got going on for the rest of 2026.
All right, Marcel.
Yeah, so I am about to launch a new blog that's going to be geared towards cybersecurity for the everyday user versus practitioners, which I already have a blog for. And I'm also going to have a podcast that goes along with that. So that should all be materializing in February.
Awesome. Freddie.
I'm going to go really, really personal. I got a son 3 months ago, so I'm just enjoying time with him. Any opportunity I get, so that is what I'm looking forward to.
Freddie, I'm so glad you said something personal because I was thinking all you folks are just all focused on work, and here I
All
am.
business.
My personal thing is looking for better snow in Colorado so I can actually ski on it because it hasn't been that good. So, all right, let's jump in. So, we'll quickly talk through the methodology that we used and then the themes that we'll discuss. So, we asked 4 questions. I'll skip them right now because we're going to cover them in individually in detail. But first of all, let's talk about the report. So Gabby, I think, provided a link in the chat that y'all can click on and get this thing. It's a big file, so it's 100 megabytes. Sorry about that, but it's a big file. We asked 14 people those 4 questions that we talked about. We tried to make it as actionable as possible. We extracted the 3 themes that we detected from the different answers. We included them along with the quotes. So you see the actual quote that the person made, as well as how things rolled up to different themes. And we tried to include some actual guidance on how you can go ahead and start implementing something. We also have a little section in there that we won't talk about today, but it's a good little bonus of what you can stop doing. And there is one of the questions was about metrics, about how you can go ahead and get your team to implement some of these things. So that is the first theme that came out of our, you guys still see the screen, right? It looks like it. The first theme that came out was attackers are targeting valid credentials for IDPs and SaaS. There's one quote from one of our other responders. Once attackers get valid credentials or sessions, they walk straight into IDPs and business critical SaaS apps like Salesforce or Snowflake, often looking like normal users. That was from Sean O'Connor. Will, you also commented similarly. Would you mind like shedding some light onto your thoughts into this particular topic?
Yes, thank you. Yes, this topic was one that kind of dominated my mind throughout last year because of all the different levels of breaches that were going on. It wasn't so much focused on any one specific platform, but you could constantly hear about some massive organizations and massive company has been breached and had like entire user databases is lifted. And then that company then gets dragged through the media, and the threat actors are posting on the dark web or posting in the forums, being not subtle about it whatsoever, making as much noise as possible. So this one is a one that every company should be worried about because it's so easy to fall victim to. All it takes is one user to have their credentials stolen, and then they can log in with those credentials into a SaaS platform, move around. The threat actors will move around, have a look at what they have access to. Due to single sign-on being a thing now, that once you get one set of credentials, you can see what else you can log into, and then they just download as much data as they can from there. It's kind of the double-edged sword of software as a service and cloud applications being so easily accessible, is that it's also easily accessible to the threat actors. The other major issues that were kind of highlighted through those campaigns of last year that I have full confidence that there's probably going to be some more of that this year, was mainly due to the lack of things like multi-factor authentication and two-factor authentication, as well as just actual log availability. Is the user logging in from the IP they usually log in from? Is it spoofed? Is it a proxy? Is it a VPN? Or is it a Tor node? And then also that data being exported from those SaaS platforms. There's really not many strict controls around these for most SaaS platforms, and then those cloud platforms barely make those logs available to the customers themselves as well. So I think this is the year that a lot of SaaS companies need to really rethink their strategies and serving their customers, because they can't shift all of the blame saying the customers didn't secure their platform, because the customers don't really have too many controls over those platforms. It's the platform providers that do.
Yeah. Any like tips for how to make this actionable? What would they do to kind of help stop or prevent, educate?
Yeah, it comes back to a lot of security fundamentals. It comes back to making sure MFA is turned on, maybe going one step further and using hardware resistant MFA tokens, making sure you're not downloading cracked and stolen pirated software that containing info stealer malware. So application allow listing, as well as just general egress monitoring and log management, log ingestion, and log enrichment. To me, these are pretty straightforward, but a lot of companies still aren't doing them.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, let's go to the second theme, which was supply chain risk will increase impact and severity. We have a quote here from Sam. While we're doing that, oh man, I forgot. Was it Freddie? Do you want to take this one? I know you responded similarly on this question.
Oh, actually, I didn't go that deep. To me, I guess, well, almost parallel, if you will. So, from my perspective, I work at the strategic level. I look at geopolitics, for instance. I also look at whether a threat actor will deliberately or by accident. It could be a nation state, it could be a hacktivist, it could be an organized crime group, doesn't matter, but deliberately or accidentally take down a critical system that will affect a lot of us. That is something, and also in Europe, there's a very big push now to be more independent from other countries' technology, which is also a little relevant, something that we cannot ignore in the discussions we have. So my job basically is to identify the threats, the current threat and the possible threats, and then looking into and tying that into the risks of the sector. So I work in the finance sector, and we work with big organizations that have infrastructure and dependencies in many systems, in many technologies. So if some of these should go down or stop working, or even the internet or cloud, it will have enormous ramifications for us. So being able to defend the doors and windows, et cetera, on your building, and also looking outwards. How is the power supply? How is the internet supply? What are all the other dependencies we now also have to take into account? So that's basically the level, at least we have really good set of discussions on lately, or the last year and a half, basically.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Marcel, I know you also commented on this one. Would you have any additional advice or maybe even some tips on how to help detect, prevent?
Yeah, well, one thing that I kind of wanted to clarify is I do think that supply chain is definitely the biggest thing that is impacting organizations right now. But there's also two sides to supply chain attacks, right? You have your compromised vendors. So like we had SalesLoft was a big thing in 2025, right? Their GitHub got breached and all kinds of customer keys and whatnot were extracted basically. So that had a trickle down effect on many large companies. But that's just one aspect. The other is a supply chain when you're talking about like the development cycle. And we're also seeing a lot of that malicious packages being used in that chain as well. So it's really two different things. And maybe there's even a third thing that I'm not thinking of right now, but companies need to be aware of both angles. And I think having a robust know your supplier program is really important, but it's also complicated because there are so many different vendors and pieces of that supply chain. And then on the dev side, there are tools to help detect, malicious packages and that sort of thing. But I also think that user education that's targeted towards developers and people in that space are also really important to focus on.
Yeah, let me just add that on the package side, we did a webinar with Paul McCarty, who has open source malware a project that he started. And so if you guys want to go check that out, it's out on our website. I think Gabby can find the link and post a recording link to it. But he talked about how you can, with all of the malicious software that's sitting out in NPM and PyPI and other things that are out there, it's a big concern that a lot of people are not paying. They're relying on their EDR and MDR and stuff, and it just doesn't give you visibility to do that. You have to go to the developers. You have to really get there. Okay, awesome. All right, third theme that we pulled out of this question on risk for 2026, AI makes existing tax faster and cheaper, but not fundamentally new. Mary, you responded similarly to this. Do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, definitely. I think I do want to differentiate between risk and threat. That was in the question. For the risk piece, definitely AI, the advancement of AI. But more so from the threat perspective is how that's being used by cyber criminal groups. And we've already started to see it now. I think a great example would be Scattered Lapsus Hunter, SLH. They've done, they're kind of changing the game a little bit when it comes to the criminal ecosystem. They're acting, as an operational shield for other cyber criminals. They're recruiting a lot of insider. And so we're only, with the advancement of AI, we were only going to see more of this. And it's going to make them, more harder to catch, more pervasive to detect. But I have thought about ways like in order to sort of combat this is especially for like CTI teams, is to define your PIRs as it relates to these very cyber criminal groups, and then based off of that, build the right defenses of it. So for example, SLH uses a lot of insider recruitment, and so if that's something you are tracking, you want to make sure you're building strong insider threat defenses, working with HR or, tracking different forums where that could be taking place.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, that's a good one. Thanks for the example. I was about to ask you, could you give us an example? And there you were, right there, giving us
Yeah,
an
I know.
example. So it's just absolutely perfect. All right. Hey,
May I jump in? Is it
yeah,
possible
yeah,
to
go
jump in
ahead.
a little bit? Yeah, good. So another thing I think is important to also add here is that although threat actors are trying to figure out a way to exploit new technology, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. We have been using AI, machine learning, for years and years already. We are also experimenting with how we can apply AI and how LLMs specifically. I'm guessing most people think about LLMs when they say AI these days, and how we're using it and how we're applying it. So there is this balance, right, to the force, where yes, the evil side is using it and exploiting it, but yes, we are too. And we're also trying to figure out a way to detect and respond quicker and do it better. So it is an interesting thing, but we also have to have a balanced discussion of it. So we're not running down the, oh my gosh, the bad guys we're all gonna die. No, we've been using it and we'll be exploiting it and try to use it for our purpose as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up. Thomas Rokia, who also commented on this, as part of this, but he had responded similarly that, and almost like a variation of the third one, where the the threat actors are actually, infecting the LLMs, right? And then, now we as CTI people are trying to use the LLMs to get better information, but some of that might be infected information and a lot of false information that's in there. So it's a crazy world that we're all navigating through. The next question, the first theme that came out of this was build audience identification into intelligence production process. So, Freddie, you talked about this a little bit. So, do you want to take the lead and talk about this theme?
Sure. No, I think my focus, so when I work, let me backtrack a little bit. All of us work and approach these problems from different levels and different focuses and different tasks that we do in our everyday work. I mean, my main focus is to look at how we can work smarter, not harder. And that goes into the processes. I'm a former Intel guy, worked 17 years in armed forces. I worked a large portion of that, even actually more than half with intelligence. And one of the things I see is that a lot of CTI people have a tendency to, there's a problem, let's download the internet, boil ocean, and try to figure out trying to figure out the problem. Sorry, what is the, they have like, they try to create the problem, I mean. And that's sort of a problem for me, because I would like to see a more focused approach. So who's asking for what? What is that they need? And then how can we service them with the intelligence and the support we can give them? So I like actually what Striker said here, right? So there are different needs to different people that will view the problem from a different perspective. From the business perspective, all the way down to should we or should we not block this IP, and all of those that range has different meanings to different people. Being able to understand from before the incident who wants what, in which order, and in what type and format helps you narrow down the workflow, but also narrow down the work and the function that you're doing, so you don't waste time of doing everything for everyone. Well, basically, you only need to do 5, 6, 7 things for these people. So I can rant quite a long time about these things, but
Do you have any tips for people, like how they might, build this into their culture or to
yeah,
get
so,
this
so
to
we
work?
use what's called an AIMS. Basically, it's a three-step model that says it's the audience, the issue, message, and storyline. Basically, is audience is who? Who are you working to help here? The issue is what is their problem? What is it that they want to know? So if something happens, they want to know certain things. What is it? So you're answering those questions rather than, oh, these are all the cool things I think they need. No, no, it has to be the other way around. You have to figure out who they are and what they want. The message is basically the answer to the question. And then a storyline, how are you answering the question to this audience actually wants and care about? Doing that will actually narrow down the focus. So having the AIMS model is a good thing.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. All right, the next one was CTI should actively reduce, not just monitor. Uh, Michelle, you talked about I'm sorry, Will. Sorry, got on the wrong question. Will, I think you talked about this a little bit in your response. So go ahead and give us a feedback here.
Yes. Reducing, it comes back to this whole thing of back in my previous job of threat hunting. We're the whole point of that exercise is to try and find things and stop things from becoming incidents proactively. Whilst the SOC and the CERT are battling things every day, every week, we're trying to get ahead of that so that they're not having to battle those things. And I think in the report I said one of the things that a lot of our customers at where I work at Team Cymru are finding that once they actually finally get that visibility into what's interacting with their network through like enrichment of their internal logs, then they can actually start to reduce risk instead of just wait themselves to be attacked. Once you're able to understand, what is this IP? What's its behavior? What's it doing? Why is our or controls, why are they communicating outbound to it? Why are they sending traffic to it? Um, Understand using different log sources, sorry, using the different data types such as geo IP, who is information, banner hashes, and X509 certificates to enrich all that data, all those IP addresses and domains that you're interacting with. You can easily start to spot anomalies and threats and things. So by using that and getting ahead of the threat, now you're able to reduce that risk rather than just wait to be attacked.
Oh, that's great. Just given that everybody probably feels a little overwhelmed with all the threats that they have to follow and everything else, it feels kind of hard to say, okay, now I'm going to get ahead. How do you help? How would you advise somebody to help prioritize that?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to what I tell our customers every day is being able to ingest data about what the threats are, where the threats are on the internet on a daily basis. You can get ahead of them. The way Team Cymru works is that not only are we scanning the whole internet, we're also ingesting net flow records from various data sharing partnerships around the world. So you can see beyond your border, you can see what the adversaries are doing, who they're attacking, all the other companies they're attacking first before they come to you. It's a good idea to stay on top of them and monitor their activities. Go beyond what's interacting with your firewall to see what's interacting with those IPs and finding multi-tiered infrastructure. I think it's a vital strategy that many of the top companies and organizations in the world are employing. And I'm just trying to get people to get more on board with that because it's truly the way forward rather than just worrying about some APT campaign in some far off country that's not too relevant to you anymore. Now it's to me, it's all about let's find the threat, let's find the suspicious activity like that's coming after us today.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. All right. The third theme that we pulled out of this workflow or process question was solidify and speed up the Intel cycle fundamentals. Marcel, Mary, you both commented on this one. Mary, do you want to take the first whack at this?
Yeah, sure. And I was actually kind of surprised when I saw the poll came back, and I thought automating intelligence would be like the number one factor here. But from what I'm thinking, especially as we're moving 2026 and the advancement of AI, in order to stay ahead of that, we really need to start automating things that can be automated so that it frees up time for actual, analysts to focus on more of the high impact analysis works and then allow, things that like basic enrichment or deduplication or, some intel collections that doesn't really require a human component into it. Just automate that as much as possible, just so we can stay ahead and we're not, we can really allow the humans to focus on what we do best.
Yeah, I think it goes to what Will was just saying a little bit too. If you're trying to do some proactive uh, analysis and to do some of that is really hard when you're just bogged down by the day to day.
Yeah.
So automating as much of this as possible would free up some of that space. Marcel.
Yeah, and I wanted to speak to actually the poll question or response about better integration between threat intel and security operations. To me, that is a really important piece of it. I think, from my experience, there's so many teams that you can support using threat intelligence, anything from, informing red team, what are they going to be focusing on in terms of pen testing in your environment? Um, GRC team, what do they need to know to evaluate risk? What's, the kind of threats that we're facing as an organization? So all of that, I think, knowing what people need to know is a huge part of sort of speeding up the process and being more efficient. And Mary, you mentioned PIRs before, priority intelligence requirements. Like, I mean, it's all well and good to like say, oh, I want to do this really deep dive on some piece of malware that nobody cares about, right?
Yeah.
And it's just such a waste of time. And, you have to keep in mind your stakeholders and what their needs are and be constantly evaluating how you can more efficiently support them and automate it if possible, but it's not always the case.
All right. So let's see how our what we got, what were the top things that came out. So rather than there's Paul's quote right there. How about that? The most underdiscussed things, the first one, CTI attention is misaligned with impact. Uh, the software package threats and supply chain visibility was another big one, and death of IOCs with operational box relay or networks. Will, you talked about this one, you brought this one up. Can you say more about what this is and what it means about the death of IOCs?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's probably I felt it's not discussed enough in CTI because it's something that whenever I talk to our customers about or people that who are prospects about, it's kind of like always a new topic for them. They're like, what is this? Why is this important? Why should I care about this? Because I think it reinforces the fact that a lot of threat actor infrastructure nowadays is highly ephemeral. And if you're not able to enrich and see the behavior of the infrastructure interacting with your perimeter, you don't really stand much of a chance of stopping an attack. And these orbs are kind of the pinnacle of that type of infrastructure. They are basically Chinese built shadow networks where they compromise loads and loads of hundreds or thousands of devices, upload custom Tor clients to them, and then proxy their connections around the world. So they have built an entire network, and not even just one, multiple of these networks, so that whenever they interact and exploit your systems, you will only ever see a residential IP. and you won't be able to understand where this attack's coming from or that you're being targeted. But again, I recently published a blog on the sort of a type of threat actor called Scattered Spider, which is kind of more of like a group, more of like a community than a traditional threat group. But again, many of the attacks that have been attributed to that threat group are using highly ephemeral infrastructure, so VPNs, residential proxy networks. There's literally over 100 different residential proxy networks that use millions of IPs. So everything is rotating all of the time. And if you don't have that context to understand what it is that's interacting with you, where people are logging in from, where data is being sent to, then it's kind of it's a losing battle.
Yeah. Hey, Freddie, you had talked about intelligence in CTI as something that was under discussed. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? It was a little cryptic, I think.
That is a quagmire because I will not shut up. What I will do though is perhaps just tweak the question a little bit. Is that so? Will and I have discussed a subtopic of this: is how will AI affect us, the CTI community? If your job can be done by an AI today, you really, really should try and figure out the way where you can make yourself useful, I guess would be the right word. And that is something that we don't talk enough about because, and again, when we say AI, most people say LLM, so that's what I mean when I talk about AI now. Um, Perhaps some things we haven't discussed enough, as I said, is not the danger, not the threat, but if there's change in technology, there will also be change in needs. So we have to be able to adapt what we're comfortable with and get out of our comfort zones to get into places where perhaps the LLMs cannot automate us out of our job. So if your job is to go online and summarize some stuff with a click of a button and then send an email, that is automated these days, right? You don't have to do that. But if that is your job, perhaps you really should lean forward and learn other skills that are needed in the organization.
Mary and Marcel, I know you both were kind of more on this side of it. So let's start with you, Marcel. Do you want to weigh in on some of these results or any particular
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
you have?
sure.
Oh, first,
So,
let me just share what we
oh
said
yeah,
was overhyped was AI threats, AI enabled attacks, and AI adoption that harms intelligence.
yeah. So I am with John Stoner on this one. I do think that AI enabled attacks are way overhyped. I mean, yes, people are using AI, threat actors and defenders alike, right? So, it improves efficiencies for everybody, and that's just the way it is. But I don't think, that we have to worry about some like crazy new malware that's all, AI made and run and everything like that is just not something that I'm seeing at all. And it's a distraction, and companies have enough things to like worry about and fix without having to, chase down every shiny possible new AI themed threat that's out there. Um, and it can be tricky too, because we all know, leadership will hear about things in the news and maybe go into a bit of hair on fire mode, like, oh my God, what is this AI thing? But really, we just need people to, not be using like RMM tools in their environment and that kind of thing. Let's stick with the fundamentals.
Awesome. Mary, how would you like to respond to that or add your own thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything Marcel's saying. I think what's just so fascinating is how we are like so excited about using AI to, better protect ourselves. But the reality is on the CTI piece is it's causing like there's like an influx of information, right? That's just really bogging down the CTI analysts and just increasing false positives, just a lot more work that now we have to go through, to clean it up. So that's where I'm like, okay, focus now really needs to be on just kind of going back to our basics, like have a very strong data model in place so that we can actually go through these quicker and so that it'll, clean up all of this faster. Also going back to my automation piece as well. So I think, that also that's been something that's a little under discussed as well.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next area. So we had the one last question was about metrics. So we really had three categories that came out. So there was metrics about consumption demand, there's metrics about decision support and defensive change. The ones that kind of fit into the consumption and demand were engagement signals, the number of people informed, the ratio of proactive deliverables. The ones that fit into decision support were things like decisions made by stakeholders based on CTI, so very much aligned with what the poll results were. That first one, material risk decisions driven by CTI and threat-driven security improvements. And then the defensive change, the ratio of proactive deliverables to the RFIs, the package security coverage, that was Paul, and time from intelligence to action. So if I go back to our practitioners here, Marcel, you said that, or I'm sorry, you said that qualitative makes more sense, and that's how you would base the success of CTI. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it goes back to that stakeholder relationship thing. And, if your CTI outputs are not, actually supporting another team in a meaningful way, then, they're not particularly useful. So chasing down feedback from your stakeholders is an important part of the process. And yeah, you can count like how many reports you tracked. Will knows we used to do that, or how many reports you wrote or published, but at the end of the day, that's not particularly meaningful. It's what kind of difference did you make for your stakeholders, whether it's internal security ops or external clients, and having a feedback loop that you actually use is a really important piece of measuring that, because qualitative is hard.
Nice. Will, you said new controls tied to your PIRs. Do you want to say like how would you actually go about measuring that?
Yeah, I think the thing about the question of the best metrics for CTI program success is hard because it also comes down to what's the purpose and mission of that CTI team. For example, um, at my old company where I kind of based some of these answers on, that was one of the goals of the program was to get new controls in place based on research, based on threat hunting and internal telemetry. I identify that, well, maybe we're missing logs of this entire category of device around the world. Maybe we should get those logs in. And here's a threat actor who's exploiting that device. So that would be like a win for us. That would be something that we've measurably improved the posture of the company. Um, but again, coming back to like how do we measure the CTI program for all there's multiple different types of CTI programs out there. I mean, for example, at Team Cymru, we have our own CTI team, and they work on multiple international law enforcement takedowns every year. Do we measure them by how many takedowns they're successful at? Maybe that's one thing. But yeah, I think it always comes down to what is the purpose and mission of that team, and make sure that that is always front of mind.
Awesome. Freddie, you said decisions made by stakeholders based on CTI. Do you have any examples that how they might implement that or any
Well, I
practical
think,
advice for them?
yeah, I think Marcel actually dragged it over the finish line beautifully and standing on top of it, victoriously. So I'm just happy with our answer. But no,
Okay.
basically, and also Will touched upon the same thing, right? One thing is you can measure the number of reports, the number of IOCs and stuff, and that's beautiful for a dashboard. But the actual drive to change and the process of figuring out what changes did our threat intelligence provide. And that's a hard thing to do because sometimes you can write a ton of reports and you go to your stakeholder and say, hey, I wrote all these reports. What decisions did you make? I don't know. And that's a hard discussion to have unless you have a structure in place where you are going to have a quarterly meeting and you have certain expectations on both sides of that table. Then you can also prepare for it and have a good discussion. So setting up that process, I think it's the key way of doing it. And that's what we do, right? I have 240 financial institutions across 5 countries in all sizes. I don't meet with all of them, but I meet with the key stakeholders, those who can affect my day-to-day job. If they're not happy, we're not getting money, right? So we're a nonprofit. They won't pay. They won't be part of this anymore. So I have to ensure that those who actually matter can use it for decisions. If I don't do that, I'm missing the point. I am completely useless, and that's when the Sable comes in and start cutting the costs on their end, and that's going to affect me and the job I do. So there is this balance of they need us, but we have to supply value. If they don't need us anymore, and that's where we have to balance it. And going forward with AI, they're going to use AI for decisions. If we're not adding value to that, we're going to be obsolete. Fire,
Yeah, no,
that was that fire grenade thrown into the discussions.
no, that's great. Hey, we're kind of done with the metric section. I'm just going to go back to a couple things that came up in the Q&A that I think are good questions for y'all. Get a couple responses on this one. What would you say are the most important skills as analysts that AI won't be able to replace, at least not in the short term? Marcel, how about you?
You must have read my mind because I was getting ready to type an answer to that one. But, I think the ability to put together the pieces of the puzzle, you have to have sort of an analytical mindset, I think, to be able to do that. And I don't know if AI can really do that yet, but being able to look at the big picture and all the moving parts of, say, like a cyber attack or something like that takes, that kind of mindset and also experience, right? Just knowing what things kind of look like and recognizing them is important.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I can piggybacking off Marcel's excellent answer. I just think that it comes down to that decision making. Can an AI really weigh the impact of a good decision versus a bad decision? I think that the things that humans can do that AI can't really is play things out and imagine what can go wrong. And humans can have way more context about everything going on over here in the background. The human knows that maybe the CISO's having a bad day. So if you ask him this thing today, he's going to go crazy. So I think that it's just that human element of taking responsibility and being accountable for things that AI is never going to replace, right?
That's great. Hey, I have we're almost out of time, so I just want to give each one of our four speakers here a chance to just give one final thought on either a prediction for next year or something they wanted to clarify, or it's really open season. So Mary, you want to start, and I'll put you on the
Yeah,
spot and
sure.
let you go.
Sure. I think what I'm really hoping for 2026 is that I see CTI as being taking a larger role within an organization. So moving beyond the silos, like moving beyond just CTI and incident response, but across the organization. That way a company can be more of like a threat-informed organization. So I'm talking about like CTI teams working with legal, working with HR, working with executive levels as well. And I think once we get to that point, then companies will truly become, a threat-informed organization. We're all speaking the same language, and it'll be much more stronger.
Awesome. Will, final thoughts?
Yeah, all good stuff. I think it's been a productive session. My final thoughts would be as CTI teams, those of you who are out there, make sure that you're getting out and networking with the community, because being siloed in your own organization, you're gonna miss stuff. And it's always good to compare notes with each other. So make sure you get yourselves to events this year, even if it's just one. Make sure that you do that, even if it's a local B-sides or one of Team Cymru's Rise events. Just to plug our own. Please do it.
Awesome. No, it's good. Good. Networking is great.
And
Freddie, how about your final thought?
I actually don't have anything. I know Gasp, the crazy Norwegian doesn't have anything. I think the other panelists have been really good at taking my ideas and running with it. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to lean back and go, perfect. This has been a fantastic hour. I'm so sad it's only an hour. It should have been 4, right? So yeah.
All right.
good, and I think.
Marcel, final thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to really add on to what Will was saying, and just emphasize the importance of information sharing, intel sharing. There's lots of different ways to do that effectively, and being in a silo is not good for anybody. And Freddie, you kind of touched on that too, with like the different relationships in the finance industry. We have ISACs here in the US, the Information Sharing Consortiums, and those are a great way to get involved and understand what's relevant to different industry sectors.
All right, everyone. I really appreciate our speakers. Thanks you so much for being here and also for contributing to the thing. I also want to thank everybody else who contributed to it. I think we had some great insights that came in. Again, you can download the paper. The link is in the web. Unfortunately, it's not clickable, but I think Gabby did provide a clickable link. And in an email tomorrow, you'll get a copy of the recording, you'll get a link to these slides, you'll get the link to the thing. So all that'll come in an email tomorrow. So don't worry. Once again, thank you so much to everyone who joined us today.